welcome to Fun Problems, the problems of fun. I'm Peter C. Hayward.
I'm AJ Brandon.
And as of like 3 episodes ago, I posted this to Discord, so this is not news to you. This is now my longest running podcast of all time. Whoa! This is episode 87, I think.
Something like that. Congratulations.
Thank you. Did you ever listen to my old podcast?
You're joking, right?
I genuinely have no memory of anything.
I listened to every episode of that before we started Fun Problems, I think, or like very early in Fun Problems, and developed a very weird parasocial relationship because we were friends at that point, but we weren't like super duper tight. And so then I was learning about, multi-year ago Peter, and I was like, this seems very out of character for you. And then
turns out people grow and change.
Yeah. And then when you went back to do a final episode a while later after you stopped the podcast, I edited that one for you. And you forgot, yeah. And you forgot to get someone to do the sign off. So I did the sign off. So I'm part of that one too.
I genuinely have the memory of a goldfish. I remember none of this at all. Like 0% of that. It makes sense that I would have taught you to edit and then been like, hey, you know how to edit. Can you edit? Anyway, that podcast, I was reading about it yesterday for some reason, and it ended at 85 or 86 episodes, and this is our 87th episode, so we are firmly the winner. Do you want to hear some stats? I went and looked up all the numbers as well.
Let's do it.
Okay, so lifetime downloads for Being Honest with My Ex, my old podcast, was 150,000. That was every episode lifetime. What do you think, and this is purely just downloads, not YouTube videos, what do you think this podcast is?
Ooh.
This is not at all what we're going to talk about today. This is a total immediate tangent.
I think it's probably 20. No, it's gotta be more, right? I was thinking that we had around 500 to 1,000 listeners per episode. But that sounds like it'd be much lower, and I feel like you're asking me because it's higher, so I'm suspicious of my number.
The lifetime downloads of this show is about 80,000. But if you factor YouTube in, it goes up to about 100,000. So this is obviously
about 1,000 per. Oh,
about 1,000 per
500 to 1,000. Yeah.
Nice. This is obviously a much more niche podcast than my other also very weird niche podcast. But it was interesting to be like, oh man, you do something for 87 episodes and you will get 100,000 listens.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Yeah. Anyway, that's the starting trivia that we start every episode in. AJ, what do you want to talk about today?
A whole bunch of stuff. It's another grab bag episode, baby.
We're down to 48 things, and I would love I don't think this is physically possible, but I would love to record our 100th episode this month. So I don't think that's going to happen, but that's my secret goal. So we're going to record a few more episodes today. We recorded 3 yesterday. We got 2 more coming up with special guest star Alex Cutler. So we are rocketing towards that number. Okay, so we're just going down our list and trying to turn things we've marked as full episodes into part of a grab bag. That's the goal. That's our internal goal. For the listener, the goal is to learn stuff and have a good time. When your game is ready / when to stop working on it. What an impossible question to answer. What do you think on this, AJ?
Yeah, so I feel like we asked this last week, but you didn't. So I'm happy to go into it more because I think we talked about it very briefly. This is the thing that I personally struggle with probably the most because I second guess myself a lot on these sorts of things. I'd be like, oh, it's a good hook and the game is good, but is it that super amazing top tier worthy of sending off to a publisher, especially if this is my first communication with them? Do I want this to be the thing that they think of?
We were talking about that in the context of Daniel.games, that maybe that's where your eyes got crossed.
Right, that's what it was. So yeah, I think in terms of when it's ready, when to stop working on it, there are some obvious things, but when it's not obvious is the trick. So the obvious things are people keep saying, I have no notes, I would buy this game. If people are in love with the game, great, amazing, you've got a hit. If you don't have those sorts of reactions, but it's doing what you want it to do, and you've tested it with your target demographic, whoever you expect your audience to be for this sort of game, and they enjoy it, then I think it gets a little bit, again, it's a little bit easier then, but it can still be a little bit tricky if it's something where you're not sure how much content you need for the game before you want to pitch it, how polished you want it to be before you pitch it. For example, if you're like, well, maybe not all the cards are balanced. Again, that's something that we personally don't care that much about. But if you care about that sort of thing, or if you're talking about, this game ideally would have 10 times the amount of content, but it has one level and it would have 10. Do you want to show it to a publisher with each of those things built? Do you want to show it with each of those things play tested? And
I'm going to jump in just to say, probably don't do that. If you're doing a 10 episode campaign, you can pitch from the first episode. And the reason I suggest this is not to be like, be lazy or anything like that. It's because often there will be a dev pass on that first episode or first level or whatever it is, and it'll just invalidate a lot of the later content. If you're pitching a, like, let's say you're pitching a 15 game campaign, make 2 to 3 levels for sure. Show them what the arc can look like and what the progress, and how it's not just the same level over and over again. But don't design all 15.
Yeah, and if you do design them, cool, have them blocked out, be like, this is the concept of it, but don't put in all the time of playtesting every single one of those things, making sure that every interaction is thought of, because A, part of that is what development is for in terms of at least the more advanced interactions or problems that can come up. But B, like Peter just said, if the publisher says, hey, I like all this stuff, but this one system needs to change, that can invalidate all the extra effort you put into the rest of it.
Or hey, I want to do this, but what if they're all moles instead of birds? And you're like, okay, that will work, but it ruins the plot I spent. This is actually probably the closest overlap conversation we've ever had between screenwriting and board game. Because when you're writing a TV show, you don't write 6 episodes. You don't write 22 episodes. You write a pilot and a show Bible. Those are the 2 components you want for a pitch. The worst thing you can do is write an entire series. Not the worst thing, but it's a waste of time because A, it'll probably never get signed. Like, TV has a much, much lower hit rate than board games, which already has a crazy low hit rate. And B, if they do sign the show, just casting the actors is going to fundamentally change what you're doing. Like, the artist that the publisher gets might be like, oh man, okay, I thought this was this tone of game and now it's this tone of game. So, like, yeah, come in with the equivalent of a pilot and a show Bible, not 6 episodes fully written.
Do you want to just 1 to 2 sentence show Bible equivalent in board games?
Oh yes, it's exactly what you're talking about. Of like, here's what level 2 would look like. Here's the ideas that I have. When Alex and I pitched Critter Kitchen, I think we talked about this in the designer diary, we came in with the base game working really well and a pitch for, like, here is a little module we want to add in called the Zoo Chefs. And here is a module we want to add in for different critics. We didn't design all of those and all the different critics because we knew that the publisher would want to have input, and we were also established enough that we didn't have to, which harkens back to the unhelpful advice, the most referenced episode on this podcast. After structure and content.
I mean, I reference structure and content constantly. It actually bothers me a little bit when people don't understand structure and content. I'm like, guys, come on. I know that this is something that our podcast made up, but it's so fundamental to how I think about games. That's like, it's crazy. All right. Do you feel like we've adequately covered this topic?
So the things that I would add to that are, one, I work in a different way because I'm weird, so unhelpful advice, etc., etc. But B, for me personally, and there's actually a bit of a crossover with my new podcast with Nicole, where we got this actually almost this exact question as the question we answered at the pilot of that, which might be out by the time this episode comes out because we're recording in advance. If it is, we'll put a link in the show notes. If not, hold your breath until it comes out. And my answer then is the same as my answer now. When I can experience the thing I've made without wanting to make changes. If I can play a full game without being like, I want to tweak this, then I know it is definitely done. And as my standards change, as my standards raise, that gets further away, or as my standards lower, that gets closer. as AJ said, like, I'm not too worried about balancing every card because that is part of development. But if I can't play a full game without being like, I want to mess with the turn structure, it is not done when it comes to me.
And just as maybe one example, because we have to mention Blades at least once per episode. It's part of the contract that we signed with AEG.
Actually, it's going to be once per topic.
Perfect. So when we signed Blades with AEG, we had 6 factions built, and we knew that 2 of them had problems. And we knew that 4 of them were, I think, playing very well. I think we were quite happy with them. We knew that they needed work.
We would have been happy for them to pretty much go to print as they were.
Right. And so when we went into the pitch, we said, here's 4. The 4 are ready to go. And here's 2. these two need more work, but you can see that they are fleshed out. This is what they're going to look like. And that was enough for them to sign all 6 of them on the spot. They could see the vision for the ones that still need some work, and they could see that the other ones were working well and trusted that we would be able to make the next 2 good because we did the first 4 well.
Man, the design diaries for bees is going to be an adventure.
That's like going to be as long as the rest of them combined, maybe.
Okay, so this next topic is sort of the opposite of this, which is being able to identify early when something does not have great potential and kill it. And this is something that I obsessively do. Part of the reason why I'm so prolific is because I come up with a lot of ideas. I think a lot of designers come up with a lot of ideas, and I churn through them very, 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 very quickly. And I've spoken before about the fact that I will play something twice, and if it's not singing by the second one, and I don't mean ready to publish, I mean like it is obviously working, like the I don't know how to describe this. The core fun is apparent and entrancing. If I don't hit that by playtest 2, I move on. Now, this is after, God, what am I at, 12, 14 years of experience. This is not something I recommend for new designers, but I will say I recommend it sooner than most people get to this point. I think I've said literally this on the podcast before. Don't revisit an idea again and again and again and again trying to get it work. Daniel Peachnik talks about this a lot on Daniel.games. Like, every project I've had that has started really good has gone to great. No project I've had that has started okay has ever gotten to great. Sometimes I get them to good, but it takes as much time to get okay to good as it takes to get good to great. So if it's not, obviously it's very subjective terms, if it's not good within 2 playtests, I'm just done with it. Maybe I'll file it away and I'll use it for something else. But a lot of the factions in Blades, there's our obligatory mention, are ideas where we're like, man, this was really cool, didn't work, oh well. But I don't think... I was at a playtest event recently with a friend of mine who had this idea that he liked the idea, and so he spent 8 months trying to get it working. And I'm like, I understand that temptation, and he enjoys tinkering. Like, he's having a good time. That's not a criticism. But for me, like, if it's not obvious if it's not obvious where it's going to get to, and where it's going to get to is great within 2 playtests, I'm done with it.
Yeah, there's something to be said for when you are first playtesting your game. Is it doing the thing that you imagined it to be doing? And if it's like, oh, I pictured this thing, it's in my head, it's going to be so great, but there's no like clear path for getting there, then that's, I think, the key problem for me. If I playtest a game and it's like, oh, there is something really fun happening here, cool. How do I focus around that fun thing, follow the dog, potentially leave behind some of the initial thoughts that I had and move on with that? If I playtest it a couple times and it's just not working, then it's like, what are you trying to build off of? What are you trying to get to? And maybe after playtest 2, it's still not fun at all, but you're like, I see what's missing. I need to fix the incentive structure. I need to do this. Okay, great. But if you don't know exactly what you need to do and exactly how it's going to pay off, or at least like have a strong indication of that sort of thing, then it's probably better to shelve it, because you can always come back later. And if you do this, 24 times, where you like play this game once or twice, move on to the next one, you're going to be way more efficient at trying new things, at seeing a lot of different types of structures of games, identifying what works and what doesn't. And then when you come back to those old games, then you can say, oh, look, I understand now why this one didn't work. And maybe there's no point in going back to it. Or maybe you go back to it and you say, if I just did this one thing different, the game's going to function. Go back to it, fix it. Great, now you got a game.
The things that I'm looking for, I want to try to answer the question really specifically. The things that I'm trying to identify are, and it's all like, I could say the spark. Cool, that's just equally unhelpful. The things that I want is for me to go like, oh, this is fun. Like, I want that gut feeling of like, I am enjoying this puzzle, or I think this is oh man, I keep using the most vague language. There's something here is the feeling that I want. I've got a game, Which is Which, that probably took me about 10, 15 drafts to get it working. But within draft 2, people were like, this is unlike anything I've ever played, and I want it to work. That is the spark for me. Like, it doesn't have to be a publishable game by draft 2, but it has to be very obvious that there's something really interesting, and you can, again, see the vision for what the final game will look like when it works. That's what I'm not after perfection in game 2. I'm after, okay, this is going to be rad.
Yeah, I was about to give an example that is a co-design, so maybe I shouldn't give it because I don't know if they're comfortable with me talking about it on here. But
do you know about Blades? Because we ran into this with Blades, where it took us like 4 or 5 drafts to get something where we could even agree on the vision.
Which one? The Bombardier? Or
no, Blades.
All of them?
The core system.
Yeah, so I'm not quite sure what you're getting at. So I can start going through it, but I might take a more circuitous route to get there, if that's all right with you.
Yep.
So as soon as you first told me the idea of you have a game where the actions that you take are linked up, and so you take an action and it's actually 2 actions, and the combination of actions varies from game to game, my mind went crazy, and I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever heard in my life. I love that. And let's use that for the game that we were already planning on making together, because counterplay is such a big part in dueling games, and something that I'm particularly obsessed with. And so I was like, that's perfect. If you have the linked actions, but the linked actions, instead of being for both you, it's you and then your opponent, that builds counterplay into the game, which works great for an asymmetric system because it's an automatic interaction point. Even if there's no other interaction in the game, that's already a core feature of it. And so in the very first build, that was just testing that concept, the action selection system. So we did that for Neuroshima Hex. We literally just played Neuroshima Hex.
But I remember this at all, but I believe you.
No? So I threw together just like, here's 4 action tiles for like just actions that you would take in Neuroshima Hex for a particular faction, and I tried to make them like the most common or focused versions of those ones.
Yes, I do remember that.
And then 4 for the other faction, and then they're paired randomly, and then
that's a perfect example. Like, that doesn't look like the final game in a lot of ways, but that is the core of the final game. And so we just tested the premise. Again, Daniel Peachnik, our Lord and Savior, talks a lot about like what we talk about on the show too, MVP, but he's very obsessive about like, just make the minimum number of cards. Next time you draw a card, write what the card does at the time. Like, make nothing. Make nothing and playtest nothing, and just create the content as you go. And so, yeah, we just took another game's content and we're like, okay, does this core idea work? It does. It's really fun. Cool. Now I'm happy to put in 8 drafts, and we'll talk about this in the Design Diary series eventually. I'm happy to go back and forth with different ideas of how it looks, because we know that it works. Like, capital W works. That's what I'm looking for very early. Okay. That's all I had for that one, unless you had anything else on identifying it.
Let's give a tiny bit more for the Blades example there. So then after that first initial step, we did another draft, and it was just like the most basic possible concept of what Blades ended up being, where it didn't have asymmetric action selection. It did have asymmetric factions, though. And so we did like 1 or 2 playtests of that build, and we knew, because we had already done that first test, that the action selection system was great, but it wasn't shining in this system. And you pushed heavily for having an additional layer of action selection. And so then you took the next draft of that one, you built that one out, and that version ended up immediately. Again, we've completely changed the faction since then. I think we threw like everything from each of those individual drafts that we did.
That was the dung beetle versus the ants, something like that. But neither of which were in the first 6 factions.
Yeah, but immediately I could see the vision from what you were showing, and even though like it wasn't, we didn't keep any of those specific elements, it was enough to see. It was a much more fun version, having this extra action selection elements layered onto the other system.
Yeah, can you see the vision? And part of the trouble is that as a designer, we love what we make. We made it for us, and so the biggest challenge in this whole thing is not being precious. And again, I think the churn helps me with that. Like, I have a game called Birds, Bees, and Butterflies that was signed for a while, and the publisher gave it back. It's the only game the publisher's given back, and I don't fully understand why. And I sat down. I had this idea. I sat down with blank cards, made it, played it against myself for 10 minutes, and was like, cool. I see that. Like, I know that this is inherently fun. Now it's just making it work.
And maybe just one last note before we move on is We've said before, but bears repeating. A game that's fun to design does not mean a game that's going to get signed. It does not mean it's a good product, right? It's yeah.
Jobs and careers in the industry. This is an interesting one that if the podcast was going on for another 100 years, we would absolutely do a full episode, but we're wrapping it up, so we're blitzing through these topics. There is, I was on a conversation, had a phone call with Joe Wiggins from Allplay, who listens to this. Hi, Joe. Really enjoyed our chat today. Good times. And we were talking about sort of the inflection point where board games took off. And obviously board games have existed since, thousands of years BC. And hobby games have existed for dozens of years. And the modern board game industry has existed for at least 20 years. But I kind of used Wingspan as the point at which games went from they leveled up. And we were talking about specific numbers that specific companies do and all very fascinating but boring industry stuff. And some of the numbers that companies do today, I don't think that any company could do before Wingspan. And I'm not saying Wingspan specifically ushered in the new era of gaming, but that's just a really handy point. Joe said Joe split it into pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, and I just went back another year or two to point out Wingspan because I think that was a real mainstream. I mean, one could argue Wingspan brought a whole second gender to board games. Can you imagine? That's not the most appropriate way to pitch that, but you know what I mean. Suddenly Wingspan was in Time magazine, and Walmart went from having Exploding Kittens and 2 other games to having 50 types of games, etc., etc. So before that, I said, and I think we might have even said it on the podcast, there are a dozen full-time board game designers. It's just not a thing. And my list was Matt Leacock, pretty much it, because everyone who you think of as a full-time game designer owned a publishing company. Vlaada Chvátil owns CGE. Uwe Rosenberg owns Lookout Games. You can theoretically make it as a game designer. And, I'm not talking the designer of Scrabble or anything like that, but in the hobby game, my number at the time was 10 to 20 worldwide. Don't expect it to happen. Nowadays, I can probably name 10 to 20, making a full-time income from board game designers who I know personally. And I don't know a lot. I don't know any European designers, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All this to say that jobs and industries is very different now than last time we talked about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and for designers specifically, one caveat is Peter's talking freelance designers, not in-house designers like Wizards of the Coast, obviously. But in terms of, I think all of these aspects, it's exploding. And, board games have had a meteoric, maybe not exponential, but it's been a consistently increasing number of sales across the board for decades now. And I think part of this has to do with, part of it's cultural. I think there's just been a resurgence in interest in face-to-face gaming because people are on their screens all the time. I think part of it has to do with we just simply live in the golden age of board game design, thanks largely in part to our Lord and Savior, Daniel Piechnik, and to a lesser extent us, and every other game designer out there who's sharing their knowledge. But I think that we're building up such an incredible institutional knowledge as a game design community that it's bleeding over a lot into gamers lexicon as well. Power creep is a term that when it first came out was a super nerdy game design term. And now every single Magic player basically is super familiar with it. And that just goes to showing how much the internet has created a really vibrant community for sharing these ideas and sharing this game design. And because there's been so much in terms of the accessibility of game design, partially from things like Tabletop Simulator, partially from just the knowledge base and those sorts of things, and partially because it's getting cheaper and cheaper to make these games, even self-publishing or making nice prototypes yourself, those sorts of things. People are doing it more and more, and it's becoming more and more culturally available. I suspect, this kind of goes back to our predictions episode, but I suspect that the next thing that's going to create a new big wave is going to be either a show or some sort of tie-in, some sort of famous celebrity from outside the board game space. I think you should. You should do it on Blades, obviously.
Tabletop was so man. We're in the history of board games now. So the golden age of Kickstarter, the golden age of board games for me began with Kickstarter because Kurt Covert, owner of Smoke and Dagger, when he first printed Cutthroat Caverns, he mortgaged his house to do it. That was like what you had to do. You had to either have a bunch of money that you had, or in his case, literally mortgaged his house to do a print run of a game. Kickstarter allows you to offload that risk, which is like it's potentially could affect a lot of industries. Board games more than any. Every board game is bespoke. It's crazy. Like, books are all the same shape with a different number of pages and obviously different writing on those pages, but they are structurally the same. Whereas Scythe and Wingspan have almost zero component overlap outside of cards and boards. It is crazy how much upfront cost there is in making a board game compared to almost any other media. And so that launched the wave of like the golden age of board games. And then tabletop with Will Wheaton was another huge factor. So many people got into board games because of Will Wheaton's tabletop, which was just excellently produced and excellently run. And no one's managed to quite capture the magic of that. There's obviously way more board game content than there was at the time, but no one's really managed to capture that, like, known, at least in nerd circles, person bringing on known comedians and celebrities. And then again, like something around Wingspan, maybe literally Wingspan, but like something upgraded us again around that time. All this to say that there's more money, and people, I think we discussed this in a previous episode, people are like, oh man, I wish I'd gotten into board games 20 years ago. And I'm like, this is the single best time to get into board game design. Like, yeah, there's more competition. Yeah, the competition is harsher and higher, but there are more publishers. There are more publishers today than there have ever been in human history when it comes to board games. And they want and they're willing to do more games. Go ahead, sorry.
And way more customers.
Yes, it's like the best time to be in board games. There's a CGP Grey quote, I probably said this last time we discussed this, where he's like, people are like, I wish I got into YouTube creation when you did. And he's like, no, you wish you had started 10 years ago. That's not the same as 2008, whenever he started, was not the perfect year. It's just that he's been around for 10 years. Those are two different things. You wish you'd started 10 years earlier, not because 10 years ago was better, but because now you'd be 10 years in.
Do you want to talk about any like specific jobs in careers, or do you just want to talk about like how many there are?
No. This is all intro into what are the possible jobs you can get in the board game industry. So, one is obviously freelance designer, which is what we do. I will also point out I have a steady non-board game income, and if I didn't, I don't think I'd be able to be a full-time designer. I'm very, very privileged in that regard, where I have a different job that I work on for a few days a month and pays me a full-time salary, and that lets me obsessively make YouTube videos and board games and podcasts, etc., etc. Whereas other designers have actually gone full time, and I think there are, like, at this point, dozens who have done that.
Yep, that's where I'm at very recently, actually. I mean, I haven't done this for a full year with the new publisher, but this is a much more stable source of income because there's just so many projects on the go. But before then, for context, I was able to do this full time because my wife works full time, so I was able to put in hours, even though I wasn't making money up front for these things. Like, right. How many? You were working full time as a game designer, not earning a full time salary from game design. Yes, and as we said before, there's a big delay between working on something and getting paid for it. Blades was signed 3 years ago, and I'll start seeing royalties for it next year.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. I didn't want to say...
anything could happen. Who knows? Freelance designer is obviously the sexy one that everyone wants. It's very competitive. It's very unstable. It's very difficult to... I mean, if you get a hit, Scott Brady... Hughes and Hughes, I think, is at 2 million printed or something crazy like that. Like, wow. Yeah, it's doing Wingspan numbers. It's obviously a less expensive product than Wingspan, but Elizabeth Hargrave, Scott Brady, they've done the very recommended attitude of just have a huge hit. Just make a game. Bez, who, I don't know if Bez still listens to the podcast, but I can never remember. They now live in the Philippines and still live off Yogi royalties. Like, that game is 10 years old now and is still a full-time income for them, which is amazing. So yeah, step one, just have a mega hit, AJ. Just do it. I don't know why you're not doing this already. B is sort of more my route of just sign a lot of stuff. And we talked a little bit last time about how there are a bunch of factors to get a game signed. It's not a reliable process, even for me, even for anyone like with a hit. It is difficult to get a game signed, but the only other way to really make a full-time living from board game design is to sign a lot of games. Either one very successful one or lots of, not unsuccessful, but less successful ones.
As a freelance designer, yes, those are the only two ways. Yeah.
Yes. So, check. That one's done. You can work in support. And this is a general term that I'm inventing right now for anything that... So if you're in the Air Force, for every one pilot, there are 100 support staff. Like, being pilot is the very, very, very rare job within the Air Force. In the same way as being a designer as a job is a very rare thing in board games, which sounds funny because you're like, but that's what does... Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, every company has... Like, if a company has a full-time designer, they also have 20 other staff members. Like, you can't sustain a company with just full-time designers. It doesn't make sense. So this is an area where I'm not really an expert. We could absolutely get Nicole on for a guest if we wanted to, because she is the COO of... I think she's a COO. She's some fancy role in Cardboard Alchemy. So she's a logistics manager, I think. So she's in charge of making sure that the game gets printed and shipped and out to retailers and on the web store and through Amazon's like, all of that stuff is a job in board games because it has to get done. Customer support is a very common entry path into board games. You were customer support for Jelly Bean. And that is exactly what it sounds like on the tin, replying to emails, dealing with customers. Sometimes or often that is overlaps. It almost always overlaps with other jobs, but specifically that'll often overlap with community management, which is stuff like running the Discord, running the Facebook groups, all that kind of thing. There is the social media manager. This is a job. This is a very competitive job, so unless you're really good at it or really passionate about it, this is not an entry point that I would recommend. But that's running the socials, going to shows and networking with the creators. Media manager, social media manager. Rosie Pocket from Cardboard Alchemy she's wonderful. She's so good at what she does, but she runs their social media and interfaces with all the other social media people to promote their games.
Is this separate from marketing, or is this often like hand in hand?
That's a good question. I would say they are often hand in hand, but technically separate.
It's one of those things where the smaller the company, the more different hats each person wears. So
yeah, and you can also leverage one way, but not necessarily the other. So like, I can leave a few marketing managers who don't have a successful TikTok account because that's not what they do. But if you have a successful TikTok account, then you can often turn that into a marketing manager job. We're not going to have interviews with all these people. I've remembered that we're a game design podcast, so ignore what I said. None of these people are coming on the show. This is just more general knowledge. If you really want to work in board games and are not a full-time... Go ahead.
Are you done your list? Because there's a lot more.
The big one I was going to say next is publisher, which is when you own a company and publish games. And this is the path that people who want to be designers are like, oh, I'll just do that instead. And like, oh, no. Unless you want to run a business. And some people do. Some people love running a business. Unless you want to run a business, don't be a publisher.
And keep in mind that if you're a publisher and you're a business of one, you are doing all the jobs we've just said and all the jobs we're about to say.
And it is not a good way to get your games designed. Like it's not a good path into game designer. It is sort of the path I took, but I wanted to run a business because I wanted a visa for America. So I wanted to run a business and then did that until I got my visa. And then I still run the business, but I run 1/3 of it instead of 100% of it. Okay, what do you got on your list?
For other roles in the industry?
Yes.
The obvious one that we alluded to earlier was in-house designer, but I don't think we really need to talk about that very much.
Yes, cool, a developer associated with it.
Yeah, and well, so I see this as different roles. So a developer, in the way that people commonly use the word developer, is someone who is effectively like an editor for a writer. You take what's there, you what was that great line that you had? You coax out the best parts of...
You bring out the strength of it or something? Bring the strength
Yeah, you bring out the strength of the design. And ideally, like, you're polishing it, you're removing any excess rules, you're reducing the amount of work, but you're keeping all the fun and emphasizing all the fun, just making it better, but keeping the core of it intact.
And just to be clear, it's much more common to have an in-house developer than it is to have an in-house designer. Yes. So in-house developer is actually quite in fact, most companies will hire an in-house developer well before an in-house designer. In-house designer is very, 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 very rare. It's only for like you said, Wizards of the Coast or someone like that. And really, they're kind of fulfilling the developer role.
Yeah, well, they have separate development teams and separate design teams and stuff. But yeah. And for developers, it's also a different pay scale. So typically speaking, designers will get paid royalties, which we've discussed and is pretty common. For developers, typically you don't get any royalties based off of the design. Typically, it's an hourly rate that they charge, and so they'll get paid more money, but they'll be paid upfront, and more money upfront. But you don't get to share in the success if the game is a hit, basically.
Yeah,
not always the case, but often.
Yeah, in-house designer we can skip. It's designing, but someone pays you full time to do it. Great, it's a unicorn job. If you can get it, go for it. But I don't know who's offering that.
It's mostly like CCG companies, not so much the like traditional board game design space. Right. Some companies that do a lot of IP stuff do that. It wouldn't surprise me if I transition into doing that at some point with the company I'm working with a lot.
FFG, Fantasy Flight Games, have and actually a few Asmodee companies just have like big name licenses, and so they're like, cool, we've got a staff of 3 designers, and their job is to get this IP into a game.
Mm-hmm.
Any other jobs and careers that you can think of?
There's artist, graphic designer. There's I think those are fairly self-explanatory. Oftentimes, graphic designers will also be in-house. It's a mix, but I think for artists, that's much, much rare to be in-house. Typically speaking, you want a different artist for whatever game to make sure that you've got the right fit for that. But if you really like working with an artist and really like their style, they could be great to have your brand emphasized. For instance, Leader Games has Kyle Farron do all their art, or at least I'm not sure with the recent shakeup if that's still the case, but at least at the time, if you saw Kyle Farron's art on a game, you'd know it's a Leader game. That's strong branding, so that could definitely be appealing.
Ryan Lockett is bizarre in that he is every single role we've mentioned. He does all of them. And has very successful... I don't know how he's a human. It does not make sense to me.
Then there's stuff like project manager and rulebook editor, rulebook writers. It gets more and more niche. I think these are pretty self-explanatory. But the nice thing with these is if you like board games and you want to be involved in the industry, and especially if you're a designer who also has one of these other skill sets, this is an amazing foot in the door.
A lot of these jobs are if you already have the skill. If you're a technical writer, you can probably get rulebook writing or editing work. If you're a graphic designer, you can absolutely get graphic design work. A graphic designer who understands games is so valuable. If you're a phenomenal artist, what are you doing listening to this podcast? You should already be making a career as a creative. We do have some great artists who are also listeners of the podcast. Yeah, and just to be clear, I don't like it, and I want you to stop listening. Is that am I being too subtle? Stop listening if you're good at art. That's the new rule. That's our sign off. When I ask you how we end the podcast, the answer is, and don't forget, if you're good at art, we don't want you in our audience. But yeah, in terms of jobs that you can kind of get as without already, if you're a lawyer, then you can probably get contract work. But again, it's not really a foot into it's just you're already doing a thing. But customer service is kind of the most common. And if you are good at project management, that is a really useful skill to have in board game design.
And I think all of these jobs pay very varying amounts, by the way. It really depends on your skill level, depends on the size of the company, those sorts of things. Obviously, customer service is going to make the least out of all of these things. And obviously, the designer has the potential to, or the publisher, I suppose, has the potential to make the most than the designer.
Yeah.
Because royalties pay off more the more that it gets. But
yeah,
it's if you want something more stable, then you will not want either of those roles.
Inherently fun genres. AJ, what am I talking about?
Such a good topic. So I'm gonna tangent for a second here. So oh shoot, what's his name? The guy who does everything with AEG. He did card crafting.
The one whose
John
house you went to?
John DeClaire.
The man who you know personally and have gone to his house for a day?
Yeah. I mean, I've
It's
forgotten
John
your
DeClaire.
name before, Jeff. So
Okay, Brandon.
yeah. So I was talking to John DeClaire about this when I was at his house that one time, and
Who? I'm not familiar.
Designer of many amazing games, designer of card crafting, the concept slash mechanic, the coolest mechanic to board games in my opinion. And he was talking about how deck building, he doesn't see it as a genre, he sees it as a mechanic, and how it like frames the way that he designs games. It's very interesting, and that's why it's kind of a cheat code to use deck building, because deck building can just be a mechanic and its own game as well. Whereas a lot of mechanics, you need something more layered on top of that. Yeah, there's some obvious examples of like you strip something down to its barest point, you get Skull as a bluffing game or Cockroach Poker, or you could just have anyway, a lot of those types of things. But what the point of this topic is there's certain genres or certain mechanics, depending on how you want to frame them, that are just inherently fun for players to play. And we can talk a little bit into why we think that is, but I imagine the most important thing is to just talk through what these are.
Well, actually, you're spot on everything, except for the reason I'm bringing it up. The reason I'm bringing it up. So let's just start with the premise. I just want to state it really clearly. It is fun to deck build. It is just a fun thing to do, to start with a crappy deck and put stuff in it and get better and have like... Deck building has this natural built-in arc, and that's why I'm specifying deck building the genre, because deck building, the mechanic, does not have an arc built in, but the genre does.
Right.
You can make a deck building game where you get worse over time, but it's not going to be that's not a genre marker for the genre of deck building. Trick taking, if you've got the kind of brain who likes trick taking, it scratches an itch to get a little hand of cards and sequence it out. And every trick you win the card. Like these are the two I listed as examples: deck building and trick taking. There are more, but like especially to your taste. If you love a bluffing game, then bluffing games are inherently fun to you. If you love a program movement, then program movement is inherently fun. And the reason I bring this up is because of the trap of making a very mediocre deck building game and being like, I have a great time when I play this, and everyone says it's fun. I'm done. I've finished the game. AJ, I'm going to get a drink while you explain why that's a problem.
Sure. Because what that means is that when you're sitting down to play your game, everybody says it's really fun. You think you've done a great job and designed a great, unique game. But what you've done is just make a deck building game, and because it's inherently fun, you don't realize that all of your contributions to it are bad. And
that is so well put. Yes. Oh no, not even bad, just neutral.
Sure, potentially. But what you're doing is that thing where you're weighing it against the quality of your games, not against the games on the market. And when you're looking at is this game fun, you're asking the wrong question. The question is this game more fun than what's already on the market? If you've made Dominion but slightly worse, well, guess what? Dominion already exists, and it's great.
Yes. People are going to have a great time playing Dominion but slightly worse, because deck building is so great, but you've not done anything. There's a quote, standing on the shoulders of giants, that I think about all the time. And it's the thing where the more experienced I get I was about to say the better I get at board game design, but I was like, oh, I don't like that at all. The more experienced I'm in board game design, the more I am acutely aware of standing on the shoulders of giants. And that's because I will play a board game and be like, oh, you've done it, random designer. You've cracked it. You've solved the problem. And now that's just mine. Now I have that solved problem as a starting point for my next design. Like, nothing I've made could exist 20 years ago even. Like, good artists borrow, great artists steal. Like, every single game I've made has been me being like, oh, I like that so much. Things and Rings is my big hit. Things and Rings is 110% Zendo. I'm just trying to make Zendo because Zendo is so cool and tickles my brain so hard. And I was like, what if I made clean, like, little Zendo, and it took off? I don't take I take very little credit for things in Rings. That's just me recognizing how great Zendo is.
Well, I far be it from me to give you a confidence boost, but
yeah. The better I get at this, AJ, your turn.
no, I think it is very much to your credit, because what you did was you recognized this concept is fun, and it is not, but it is not done in an accessible way, and you made it. You did the same sort of concept, but in a much more, I think, fun and accessible way. And that's why it took off and became so successful. And I think it would do a lot of designers a lot of good to look at these games and say, wow, Gloomhaven is an amazing game. I love that action selection system. But you know what? It's very inaccessible. It's very big and complex. Is there a way I can boil down the fun of that to something that can hit more people? That's a lot of my designs, actually, is starting from that space of, I wanted to love this game, or I did love this game, but I can't show it to other people because I know that there's all these barriers. Can I take the part of it that's really working? Can I identify that core fun and use that for my own benefit?
and to be clear, that I could go through a list of how many of my games that is. I'll do one example, which is you and I played Red 7. This might have even been the same trip that we came up with Blades. And Red 7, Carl Chuduk, I think, is a mega genius. Like, I just think he's one of the great minds in board games. And Red 7 is the only one of his kind of like quadrilogy of hits that I was like, oh, I don't like this. This really annoys me. Not because it's badly designed. It just doesn't work for my brain. And I want it to because I love Carl Chuduk so much. So I went and made Converge. And I emailed Converge to Jason at Buttonshy, and he signed it that day. Like, it was such a fast turnaround. He didn't sign it the day I designed it, to be clear. He signed it the day I emailed it to him. And it's... If you've played Red 7, Converge is so obviously Peter's take on Red 7. And it's funny because AJ does not like Converge because you do like Red 7. I don't like Red 7, so I do like Converge. That's how it works. And so, yeah, so many of my games and designs and even co-designs are just me being like, Triangulation is me loving Decrypto and hating to teach Decrypto. And my pitch to Joe was literally just, hey, you like Decrypto? He's like, of course, I love Decrypto. I'm like, cool. Here's my Decrypto, but it's easy to teach. And he's like, oh, here's a contract. Done. Like, the end. So yeah, it is 100%. Anyway, the topic we're talking about is inherently fun genres. Go ahead.
I want to tangent for a couple different things here. I want to add one inherently fun genre. I'm going to say push your luck / dice games. It just releases dopamine. It's the anticipation. I understand some people have negative feelings towards luck-based things. That's probably them being like built up against these sorts of elements from bad experiences. But oftentimes, those same players won't realize how much they do love those sorts of luck-based elements. But they just want to be hidden nicely. Or I always think of Nate Wall as my like archetypal this sort of person who I'm not saying like he doesn't realize that like luck can be fun. All I'm saying is like
just to be clear, Nate, we don't want you listening to this podcast. Please get better at art so we can officially tell you to stop listening to this podcast.
I just think of Nate as like my example sort of audience when I'm making a certain type of game and another type of game. But I think Nate also
knows what he likes, and he's very good at the kind of games that he likes, and he makes the kind of games that he likes. I love Nate. Nate's great. I just wish he'd stop listening to the podcast.
I have nothing negative to say about him at all. But yeah, so I think that there's
he reviews Converge and he updated it every month for like 6 months, and the rating got lower and lower and lower. And I check my reviews every month. It's part of my process, and every month I was like, "Hey Nate, enjoyed Converge less than last month, did you?"
At some point, you think you'd stop playing it, but
I know you'd think so.
On the other hand, maybe gets roped into it like me with Flip 7, because I do that with Flip 7. Every time I play it, I'm like, "Ooh, I found a new thing I hate about it," and I'll add to my review.
He wanted to make it work. He wanted to love Converge, so he kept trying.
Honestly, that feeling is like the biggest driver of me to design things. When I wanted to love something, I was so close, but they didn't stick the landing for me. But I just want to zero in on...
When is AJ's Flip 7 coming out?
I've already designed it. I just have to pitch it, which, as you know...
It's called Blades. It's basically the same game.
I mean, Blades...
Oh, we could absolutely do a Flip 7 faction. We should absolutely do a Flip 7 faction.
Yeah, I mean, I built the again the first draft. We have equal ownership of everything, but the hidden movement faction was I don't like how hidden movement games work. I wanted it to work differently. Here's my take on that. My push your luck game faction in that one was I don't like how push your luck is so atomic and self-contained and just like you get points, whatever.
Yeah.
I want push your luck to have another system that it's impacting. So each of those factions have are like something I didn't like about other ones. But yeah, I wanted to tangent to a different but kind of similar topic, just because I think it's so interesting talking about trying to identify these sorts of elements that are, what is inherently fun about this, or why does this work and this doesn't. I think it's so important to be able to assess things like this, because if you can't do that, all you can do is copy paste what other people do or take shots in the dark. I actually think this is like a really, really important thing for people to pay attention to think about. If you don't understand what is fun about something and what isn't fun about another thing, then you can't extrapolate and create something new and something unique. And if you run into a problem and you say to yourself, how do I solve this? And you're operating in new design space, you're trying to do something that other people haven't done before, you're going to be completely lost at sea, so to speak. And so let me give you a recent example that's been on my mind. I've been making a lot of games that that have some sort of combat element, and the default for we need to have a combat system that feels tactical is you use dice. Why does that make it feel tactical? Because you can't sit down and say, on my turn, Peter, I'm going to go over and attack this guy, and then you can go over there and attack that guy, and then we win. And then it feels like a puzzle. It doesn't feel like an action game.
Jeff Fraser, friend of the podcast, loves big 4X games. That's his oh, not even space. Sorry, I didn't say space. He loves 4X games. They don't have to be set in space. And I didn't say space, so I don't know why I'm specifying that. And his kind of like white whale is not using dice for the combat. And so I've played many of his games where he's like, okay, and here's how the combat resolves without dice. For exactly that reason. Like, a lot of these games, I think Game of Thrones is the biggest exception, but a lot of these 4X games will be like, and then dice to resolve the battle for exactly those reasons.
Mm-hmm. And so the thing I keep running up against is, of course, my games feel too much like puzzles. So I have to find ways to make them feel more tactical without using dice. And even some of the games where I do use dice as part of the elements of it, I still push myself more and more to wanting to do something that's different there. And it's not that dice is inherently wrong, but I think it is overdone. It is kind of I won't say a lazy solution, but kind of is. If you're just like, yeah, then throw some dice in there and it will function. Like, we understand that your game will function from that. But it's very interesting to me to look at if the problem that dice are trying to solve, if the design reason for dice being in there is to make the game feel more tactical and more exciting, because you're like, oh man, am I going to hit or not? What are the ways to do that fits this particular game the best, as opposed to just using dice and saying it's going to have a randomized outcome, it's going to be exciting to know whether or not I hit. It's not very fun for me to be like, oh, I missed, or oh, I hit. It's a very kind of binary thing, and oftentimes there's nothing interesting to me about the dice system. And I play a lot of dice games. I like dice. I'm not against randomness. Post-decision or pre-decision doesn't matter to me. I like them all. But it's very interesting to me to look at each game instead individually and say, is dice the right solution? And if it is that dice is the right solution, what is the best way to implement it rather than just a binary hit or fail? Go ahead.
Dice are victory points. Not every game needs victory points, but man, do victory points make your food taste good. They are the butter of game design. You put them in and you can just turn your brain off a little bit because they solve a lot of problems. They don't work for my brain. Victory points, it's like... The analogy I often think about, I don't know if I've said on the podcast, is like, hey, I really like you. I'd like to date you. Can I give you money for that? And it's like, can you try something else? Can you try making me like you before just offering me money? And it's like, no, I'll give you money and you date me. And it's like, okay, that's the feeling I get from victory points. It's such a specific, like, Peter problem. But
now I understand why you're turning me down. It's nice to hear that was the reason. Now I can try again.
It's because you're such a prize that winning you would be 1,000,000 victory points. And I'm like, I don't want that. That sounds terrible. Yeah, and anytime someone's blatantly offering me victory points, I feel icky, like someone's trying to bribe me, and I just don't put them in my games by default. Like I have a few that are co-op games where you just need an arbitrary score. But my only other games with victory points are co-designs or one very early design, Bugs on Rugs. And they're dice for combat. Like, they absolutely work. And if you want something that works, it's right there on the shelf. You can fill that steak with butter, and boy, will it taste good. I just don't like it.
All right, shall we move on to another topic? I think we can squeeze in one more.
No, I have one more thing on this, which is, as we were talking, I realized kind of my point, or the point that I now decided I want to make. If you're in this genre, it's not enough to just deliver it. I mean, I say that. It is enough. If you can get it signed, sure, great. But you want to elevate it. You want to take deck building, an inherently fun genre, and be like, hey, I took deck building and I elevated it, and then it's something, then you really got something. And this resulted in some introspection. I went on a whole journey, AJ, while we were chatting. And I realized that I don't think I will ever be a capital G great designer, because I don't think, for the most part, my games elevate. I think that they deliver, and I think I'm really good at delivering, but I don't think I elevate. And Things in Rings is what made me think of this. Things in Rings delivers accessible Zendo. It nails it. It is exactly that. And then the production that Joe and his team put on it, that's what elevated it. Like, the elevation was after my input. I'm sure the... Oh, go ahead.
Is really interesting. I think the only reason that you maybe haven't thought of Blades as doing that is because you don't play that genre. When that game comes out, you're going to hear people say that you're elevating the tactics genre.
I've said many times, I think Blades... I think my three best designs are Blades, Triangulation, and French Toast. And so I don't play dueling games. I'm also so burned out on Blades.
Yeah, I get that.
I'm way too close to see it. But yeah, like, I love my games. I'm very proud of my games. I think I do good work. But this conversation made me be like, man, I don't think I elevate. And that's just something I'm going to reflect on and try to work on. I think that I deliver real good. I think I'm excellent at delivering. But I look at someone like John Perry. John Perry is my go-to, like, contemporary, who I just think is a natural elevator.
Mm-hmm. But I think
if you ever see him, just jump on in and go right to the top of the building. He's an elevator. He takes things and he just makes them. He's a man made of butter.
I would say you elevate games in that you do a lot of refining of things. You do a lot of, I liked this idea, like with what you just said about Things on Rings, right? Things on Rings is, I would say, a refinement of Zendo to a very significant degree.
Yes, and I think that's what I mean when I say, like, yep, I took that and I cleaned it up. I didn't elevate. I didn't make better Zendo. I made cleaner Zendo, which is a form of better, but you know what I mean. Like, it's a different axis. Anyway, this has been self-reflection with Peter. Okay, one more. Okay, this is a short one. If you are in a feedback session, and this is just literally a tool you can immediately add to your toolbox, get feedback from people who haven't played the game first. This is just a immediate apply this to every playtest you're in, and it's really, I mean, A, it's nice when they can just, like, jump in with their first thoughts, and B, I think it's so much more useful to get the fresh thoughts before they hear what the changes were or what the people who have played the game before. And then on top of that, or adjacent to that, I would say also get feedback from the lesser experienced people first. I'm famous for, whenever I'm giving feedback, I'm like, hey, I talk too much. Everyone else go first. Because I can give 40 minutes of feedback after every game. And in the process, I will sometimes eat up the one thought that someone else had. And that's not necessary. It's not kind. Like, let people give feedback. Let new players to the game, and let people who are less, like, experienced on the path of game designer go first.
Mm-hmm. And I just add to that, not only whoever's the least experienced at the table, both with your game and in general, and even then, like, you break it down further. Like, you don't have to go in a circle. If you have someone who might be less experienced, but you're like, oh, I know that they're really into the genre. just try to pick in an order where the previous person isn't going to make someone else's answer change. You want to get fresh, unfiltered feedback.
Yes.
And if you have a playtest with Peter and Joe Schmo, who's never played a game before in their life, then and Peter goes first, Joe Schmo's gonna be like, "Oh, I liked the card that makes me attack." Like,
yeah,
you know,
it's not nice. Actually, while we're here, let's segue into agreeing and disagreeing with other playtester feedback, because I think this is a really interesting or useful topic. It is valuable to disagree with other people's feedback, and I see this a lot. People being like, "Oh, cool! I actually had the exact opposite experience," or like, "Actually, I'm going to take this in a different direction." There are nice ways to frame it. Don't be like, "No, that's wrong and dumb." Obviously, hopefully, if you're listening to this, you're not likely to do that, Nate. But it's definitely valuable. If someone says something that's the opposite of what you thought, don't feel like that invalidates your feedback. Also, don't assume that you invalidate their feedback. Like, as a designer, getting conflicting feedback is so valuable. Because sometimes I'll be like, man, I thought people were going to love this, and this person just really, really hated it. Maybe I was off base. So when someone else jumps in with like, oh, I actually love that, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'm not trying to cancel out or invalidate feedback, but it is useful to hear that. It's useful to hear different things, and then if you strongly agreed with someone's feedback, jump in and say that. It's nice to, as a designer, to hear feedback reinforced. As a feedback giver, to hear like, oh man, okay, cool. Someone else felt that way. I think these are all like, don't hold back is the headline here, but like, if Joe Schmo who's never played a game gives a thought, I'll often be like, yes, okay, cool. That's actually exactly what I thought too. I think that's a really relevant note.
Mm-hmm. And if you're giving feedback, just a friendly reminder, try to always coach it as I felt X when Y, or this, the economy seemed too tight, so I didn't do this action, those sorts of things. And try to less so give advice and be like, you should change this specific thing. Rather try to identify, the thing that caused you to want to make the suggestion. And if you give the suggestion, at least frame it as, I noticed this problem. Here's what I think could be a potential solution. And that way you have...
Or I'll often be like, here is what I have done in the past when I faced a problem like this. That I think I think is more helpful, or can be helpful. As a designer too, don't be afraid to ask for suggestions. If I'm stuck, which I often am, I'm like, okay, cool. Here's what I'm trying to do. How could I do this? People love pitching in thoughts. Don't do it at the start of feedback, because then you'll get nothing but suggestions for the whole rest of the feedback session. But after you've heard everyone's take, it is really valuable to be like, hey guys, how can I fix this? There's this thing in playtesting circles of like, every idea you give to someone else's game is a gift. I've talked about this before. My playtester Ren, listened to the podcast, suggested the Venn diagram for things in rings. Like that, the thing that it is known for was a suggestion from a playtester. And I don't feel guilty or bad for taking that and making money from it, because I have given hundreds of suggestions in my playtests that have gone on to get games signed or gone on to be like a part of a thing. Ren, if you're listening and you secretly resent, I sent them a free game. But I think it's just part of the playtesting process is you give and you receive, and you give and you receive, and it all evens out in the wash. And it's very kumbaya.
Well, I think if nothing else, you have given a little bit to everyone in this podcast,
except for Nate. I want to be really clear. Nate, you are not allowed to take anything from this podcast.
Or
I know we said that's the last. Yeah, artists shouldn't be. I know we said the last one, but I just noticed one that I think we can cover really quickly. You've got healing is bad. Do you want to explain that? Because I have an immediate useful thought on this.
Sure. So, in games that are combat based, healing is usually the caveat bad. The downsides of healing are because I think it's much more valuable to just say it's bad and don't put it into your game than it is to put it in, because the amount of value people are going to get out of healing is probably not worth the amount of effort it's going to take them to do it right, and you're much more likely to do it wrong than do it right. The downsides of healing are it feels like it undoes work, which is very unfun for players. It can make the game take drastically longer amounts of time. It is very
or variable amounts of time.
Yep. It is very difficult to balance, because if Peter attacks me for 10 and then I heal for 10, Is that fair? There's a lot of complexity to go into whether or not that is actually the case. Healing also requires, by default, it doesn't require any conditions. If it's just like damage versus healing, typically speaking, there's going to be some sort of condition or some sort of thing that you have to do in order to push damage through, and healing invalidates that system. So, for example, in Blades, I think you had like 3 healing effects in the game, and it's shipping with 1. And a lot of that has to do with the way that healing functions in the game is very significant. Every attack in the game is 1 damage. Healing is by default 1. And if you heal in that game, it's like you get to put a direct point of damage on the opponent from anywhere, ignoring their defenses, effectively, right? Like it's you go up 1 versus them going down 1. So not only does it have the variable length, the balance issues, those sorts of things, it's also, it can lead to looping play patterns, which is very unfun. If it's like looping heals in order to stall out the game, it can take not only a long time, but a lot less interesting action. And typically speaking, I think healing is a less fun action to take, not only for playing against it, but it's also less fun to play with, because healing yourself feels less fun than damaging your opponent. So healing is bad. There are ways to do it better than others, but go ahead. I think you're probably chomping at the bit.
I am going to tell you why healing is bad in 2 very short sentences. Avoid having your ramp be reversible. It's okay that some things are reversible, such as money, resources, etc., but at least one important thing should just go constantly upward. In a combat game, probably everything else goes up and down, and so health should in inverted commas obviously be the ramp that just goes in one direction.
Now, we had extensive conversations about healing in Blades, and at some point I expect I will design a healing faction. I already have some ideas on it, but
well, actually, just in this conversation, I'm like, you know what would be really interesting is a extremely conditional healing faction.
Right. And
where
if we
don't just have a like heal 1, it's like heal 1 if you are next to 2 enemies and you have and you're on water, like stuff like that. Now it's it's harder to heal than it is to damage, but super valuable.
Yep. And there's a lot of different ways to make healing feel more reasonable in your games. Like we said, conditional healing. If you cap the amount of healing, so it's like, yes, you can heal, but like in a Dark Souls sort of style of game, where it's like you have to take an action to do this. It's an interruptible action. You can only do it so many times. All those sorts of things contribute to making it feel more reasonable and to give counterplay to the other player. And in Blades, it's a conditional healing, it's limited, and it's interactable with the opponent. And it's
destructible, yeah. Oh, is that what you mean?
Yeah. So it basically works as one of your cards puts in a caterpillar. The caterpillar is leaning on the board, and while that's on the board, if you take a specific action, flying to a flower with your butterfly, then you get to heal. It's only if you take that specific action to that specific location, limiting the usefulness and making it more interesting, like attacks are. And then it's limited in that, you can only have so many opportunities to do that with your cards and effects. And also the opponent has counterplay in terms of putting units on the flowers to block them, or they can attack and destroy that caterpillar as well. And that's only if you get that caterpillar and play it. So there's a lot of conditionals on there that make it a much more fun.
The other thing that really makes it work with that faction is that against the butterfly, every attack is almost a lot of damage is actually 2 damage. And so healing 1 is less impactful on the butterfly than it would be on any other faction, because when you take out a chrysalis, which does take 2 attacks, so I'm not saying it's not 1-to-1, but like when you take out a chrysalis, it does 2 damage. So they're actually, for most of the game, ticking down by 2 at a time, and so getting 1 isn't as impactful as everyone else who ticks down by 1 at a time.
Is it 2? I thought you took 1 when it dies.
Oh, you're right. What am I thinking of?
I think we did have that version at one point. But one thing that you can do...
I'm thinking of multi-attacks. Never mind. I'm too deep in the weeds. It's not uncommon to attack the butterfly and a chrysalis both at the same time.
Right. And there's even more counterplay in terms of you do have a cap for your HP. And so if they heal 1 after only taking 1 damage and they're back to full, yes, if you just keep focusing the butterfly, it's going to be able to keep healing persistently. But not only can you take out the caterpillar first and then it's not able to do that, because the caterpillars also deal damage when they're destroyed, you can attack that caterpillar and turn it into a chrysalis, and then 1 more hit will remove it and damage the butterfly. But if you turn into a chrysalis, you can keep doing that with other ones, and then you're basically storing up damage for once you do defeat the one that gives you the health.
Controversial opinion, AJ. I think that game's real cool.
It is real cool. Some would
How
say
do you
it
feel
elevates the genre.
Who says that?
I do.
Right now, I think you say that.
Yep. And in a brisk 100 years, so will everybody else.
Yeah. How do you feel about fun, A to the J?
Oh, gosh, I love fun. So my fun question for today is: what is a possession that you once had that you really wish you could get back?
You've asked a similar one because I talked about this dragon I had as a kid. And Alex Cutler, our most frequent guest, went and found me the dragon and bought it for me as a gift. It's one of the sweetest things. I think on a later episode you were then like, what's the best gift you've got? And I was like, I can't think of anything. And now I'm like, obviously that dragon is one of the sweetest gifts I've ever gotten. It's very lovely. I'd point to it. It's in my bedroom on my special shelf.
All right, different question then. This is a grab bag episode. What is your favorite bag, backpack, or container that you own?
Oh, man. Okay, so there is an Australian company called Crumpler. And they make high-quality backpacks for creatives, like for hipsters. I don't know how to describe it. Like, they are for millennials. And so, for example, my favorite backpack is this big black backpack that has a zip down the side. You've probably seen me use this for over a decade now. That it was constructed to fit a MacBook. Like, that's what it's for. It fits a MacBook in that little pocket. And I love that bag. I've had it since I went to Australia in 2017. I use it almost, like, anytime I leave the house, I almost use it. And so on my recent Australia trip, my girlfriend and my son and I went back to Australia last year. I went over with a budget of $1,000 to buy as many bags as I wanted. And I brought a suitcase specifically to fill with bags from Crumpler. And they don't do the specific bags that I had, but I have now half a dozen. They're expensive. They're very expensive bags, but I have a lot of Crumpler bags. In fact, if you're watching on the web, you can see the backpack that I'm talking about right there. It hangs very conveniently right near where I am. And they do colors that I like, and they're designed. I used to have a camera bag. When my camera got stolen, it was with that bag. And so to circle back to your first question, in my old apartment, the one where I lived at when we started this podcast, I had my car broken into. And they stole a bag with a laptop in it, and I missed the bag so much more than the laptop because they don't make this bag or anything like it anymore. It was an over-the-shoulder satchel. It was a bright red. It exactly fit like my iPad in it. It could fold over if I didn't want to have my iPad in it. It was just a perfect bag, and I don't have it anymore, and I never will again, and it makes me sad. Alex.
That's tragic.
if you're looking for another thing to buy me.
I think for me, it's my Switch One case. It's just like a nice. I think it's a faux leather, but it looks like it's real leather. It's very convincing. And it's got like the Legend of Zelda like Link mid like arrow shots. It looks pretty sweet. Got a nice, just simple, comfortable handle, and it's got a very like small profile. It fits like exactly the Switch, and with the if you have like a little extra handles on it, to like give it a better ergonomic grip to it. So it exactly fits one of those with that grip, which I have, and then it has like a little skinny thing for game cartridges, and even fits in the like clips that go onto the end of the controllers if you want to split them off and have like each person controlling like half of the controller and everything. So it fits like all the accessories and the Switch without being like it's so much smaller than you think it would have to be to fit all this stuff. It's great. Love it.
My Steam Deck, which apparently they don't make them anymore because of computer chips or whatever. I bought the Steam Deck from Alex because he wasn't using it, and I was like, I learned you could play TTS on the Steam Deck, and I was like, oh, cool, I can playtest solo games now from anywhere because I make a bunch of solo games, and it's just so handy to be able to sit there and be like, doop doop doop. I just did 2 runs of Genome Run while I was waiting at the whatever. And nowadays I travel without my laptop. I leave my laptop here and my assistant uses it for some of the work that she does for me. And so I travel with my iPad and my Steam Deck. And the Steam Deck has this little case, and it like perfectly fits the Steam Deck. And the Steam Deck has the 2 little, I was going to say thumbnails. What are they called? The joysticks, 2 little joysticks. And the bag has little divots for the joysticks to fit into. And the one problem with the Steam Deck is that it's horrible to type on. And TTS is not configured for the Steam Deck. So whenever I want to log in, I have to like manually type in a password, and you physically can't do it. Like the software is not set up to let you do that. So I bought a teeny tiny keyboard, like the size of the size
a credit card.
Yeah, literally just a little bit bigger than a credit card. And it connects by Bluetooth, and it charges by the same USB-C as the Steam Deck does, so it's always charged. And it fits perfectly into this little bag, and into the little Steam Deck case, and I love it. I love how it all comes together.
Nice.
It's very satisfying. It's like playing a polyomino game, but with a bag.
Do you have a published tip for our audience?
Yes. So this one fits our kind of grab baggy style because it's a little bit rambly. A lot of publishers will have an in-house style, and this is something that I kind of learn about when working like later in the process. So I'm obsessed with rule books, as you know, and the listeners might know at this point. I think the rules are the beating heart of a game, and I want the rule book to be perfect, and I just really obsess over the rule book. And so I'll ask, hey, do you guys have an in-house style for this thing? Like, do you use second person, or do you use they, them, or she, her, or he, him pronouns, or whatever? Like, they'll have a style. And I love learning the different styles of publishers. And the way that this translates to a publishing tip is, this is sort of what the whole premise of our Would All Play Publish This kind of series, is that they also have a style for games. Now, All Play is an extreme example where they have 3 box sizes, and so any game needs to fit into one of those box sizes. But they also have other stylistic things. I think something like 60-70% of All Play games have a whiteboard in it. They just decided at one point, we like whiteboards. And so I'm not saying if your game has a whiteboard, they will sign it, but it is nice to be able to tailor your pitch to the in-house style of the game. I'm working with Bitewing on a lot of games at the moment, and speaking of carry cases, they love those like little carry cases. And so on their Kickstarter promo more often than not. By the way, I recommend this a lot, but go listen to The Bits, which is the podcast with Nick from Bitewing and Joe from All Play, and they do a whole episode on boxes. It's really interesting.
Link in the show notes.
Link in the show notes. And so like they love those travel cases. And so if you have a game that would travel really well, again, none of this is a guarantee that you'll get signed, but it's just that one little bit of like, oh, this would fit our line because it matches our style. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good tip.
AJ, and we covered this, so you can't get it wrong now, how do we end this podcast?
By saying goodbye to everyone except the artists innate that we all hate.
Bye!
Thanks for joining us. You can find us and our incredible Discord community in the show notes, or reach out to us privately at funproblemspodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed the podcast, please tell a friend.